Hello, and welcome to HBO's Succession, the analysis of a toxic family system, with Mandy Friedman, licensed professional clinical counsellor, and Andrew, her brother.
Hello there, Mandy Friedman here, licensed professional clinical counselor, clinically certified domestic violence counselor, clinically certified trauma professional, and the owner of Claremont Mental Health. I'm here with my brother again, Andrew. Hi, Andrew.
Hey, Mandy. It's great to be back to talk about Succession, one of our favorite shows. And today we're going to talk about Siobhan and what's going on with her in season 3. Well, as always, the children's main thing they're trying to do in every season is trying to get the CEO job. So that's what Shiv's trying to do as we join her at the beginning of the season. She's given a task, and that is to recruit the lawyer, the high-powered lawyer Lisa, to help Logan in his fight against Kendall.
That's right. That's one of the first responsibilities she's given, as it seems like that she's going to take this position. She goes to try to, get the lawyer, and it doesn't go well, and she throws kind of a tantrum and storms out, but she learns that Kendall has retained this lawyer for himself.
Yes, Lisa kind of gives a point of it would be a bad look for her to be defending Logan. So that's why she's chosen to go with Kendall. She bought his bullshit a little bit, I guess, and thinks she can control him. But Kendall tries to recruit Shiv, and he says that he has the moral high ground.
What they sent her to do, she fails.
Yes.
So her stock is tanking immediately. There's a lot of ups and downs this season for Shiv, where she gets picked up and dropped, and she thinks something's going to happen, and it's not. And this is one of those first moments where she's all right, charging in, and doesn't go well. Now Kendall is trying to get Shiv to join his side, and he thinks that he's painting himself as the hero of the situation, that Logan and Raystar, that's the bad guy and he's the good guy, and that he has the moral high ground here, trying to do the right thing. But I think that this is yet another tactic. And as we know, they'll pretty much do and say anything to get where they want to go. Kendall even says to Shiv, "I'm you right now." In other words, she's supposed to be the good one. She's supposed to be the progressive. She's supposed to be the more liberal of them. And the fact that he's the one taking the more outsider position there, he feels like that is him taking over what she should be doing, or at least that's what he's painting it to her to seem like, is that, don't you want to be good like me? I thought you were the good one, but clearly I'm the good one and you're the bad one, is what he's saying. It's like they're 5 years old, but they just use bigger words now.
This season has some kind of major relationship stuff that happens between Shiv and Tom, Shiv and Logan, and Shiv and her mother, Caroline. So one of the first things that we see happen between Tom and Shiv is they have a discussion about the amount of love they have for each other.
Shiv is feeling that there's something different within Tom. And while she's usually the cold one, who is not affectionate, who, doesn't really act like she loves him, she's saying, "I love you." And he says, "Thank you."
Thank you.
And she's like, "Well, you love me?" He answers that, yeah, there's love there. But the way he answers it, it's like they're talking about a stock portfolio. And they take the love right out of everything. It's just, there's nothing loving about it. It's very cold. It's very transactional. And it always goes back to these sort of metaphors where it removes all the love and romance and genuine feelings out of anything. So yeah, he says in the end, "I'm just glad to know we don't have an unbalanced love portfolio." And that's how they say they love each other.
Everything with them is some kind of negotiation, like business style. And it's whether it's talking about, "Hey, do you love me?" or "Hey, do you want to have a kid?" We'll talk about that more in a little bit. Another relationship that is all business is Logan and Shiv. And Logan has this whole stunt going on. The stockholders are worried because the family, they don't like each other. Kendall's attacked Logan. So, in a kind of show of solidarity, Logan sets up this whole publicity stunt where they'll all get off a plane together and meet each other and hug and all that stuff. But he didn't get a hug from Shiv. Aw.
She stays in the car. Roman's out on the tarmac and hugs his dad because, Roman, he's more susceptible to that stuff. But Shiv's like, nah, I don't think so. I'll go, but I'll just stay in the car. It's very obvious that this is being done for the cameras. Also, this is not a hugging family. Logan gaslights Shiv, saying a hug would have been nice, acting like that's gaslighting. He doesn't want a hug. He needs a picture. Gaslighting is when it's clear what the truth is and it's a shared reality, but we're going to pretend like that it's not. Someone is stealing reality away, turning it into something else. A hug would have been nice, but she's not stupid. She points out the photographer's got plenty pictures of her sitting in the car, and then she calls him Captain Cuddles. Obviously, they're not a huggy, touchy-feely family, and she's just not in the mood right now to be the meat puppet.
When she hugs him, she could feel those scars on his back. Maybe we don't want that,
Right?
So,
Yeah.
Now this is yet another status of Shiv. Where does she stand with Logan? And you could kind of like track the season that way. Is he reeling her in? Is he pushing her away? Is he love bombing? Is he doing all these things? And at this time, he's trying to reel her in with the promise of position and the promise of a higher status.
Objectifying her in many ways. He needs her as a female figure to make it seem like that, hey, we're not that bad. But he also needs a family member, someone he can trust. In other words, someone he can control. That's what trust is for him. And he thinks that he can control Shiv, and to a large degree he can. Logan is using her, essentially. We're calling it objectification, but he's using her. It's just insert person here, insert female here, insert controllable figure here, and using people around him as pieces to a game that he can move around, and she's just one of them. She's not special. She clearly doesn't have status with him. He just picks her up when he needs her, drops her when she doesn't act right or when he doesn't need her, and then circles back around to see if she's still on board with him over and over and over again. I mean, it has to be just exhausting to live that way with him.
Logan Roy treats objects like women, man. So Shiv tries to make peace with Kendall at the big, writers gala, journalist gala, and Logan is very nice to her. But it's so he can manipulate her into helping him, of course. He will not take responsibility for all this stuff, even in private with Shiv, all right? And as you alluded to earlier, this time she is the meat puppet that won't do what Logan wants. And they have a whole conversation about that.
They do. And you can see as we explore her relationship with Logan and as we explore her relationship with her mother, Caroline, you can see where she gets her tactics from. You can see how these things are getting passed on generationally and how she interacts with Tom and other people. And she learned all of this somewhere. So he says to her in a private conversation, sometimes when I look around and I don't see that you're out there saying something, in other words, when she's not rallying for him, he says, I ask myself, does Shiv even like me? Does he care if she likes him? No. But he's trying to read her. He's trying to take her temperature and see where she is with things. You're my only daughter. Do you trust me on all this hullabaloo? Health, safety, and compliance. There was a few bad apples. He refuses to take responsibility for Waystar's crimes, even in this privacy, in the private moment with his daughter, who he is coercively controlling and manipulating to get her to be the token female, play her role. He doesn't think she's doing a good job of playing her role. Furthermore, he acts like that by twisting the narrative and avoiding responsibility, he's actually keeping her clean. That, this is about me, we don't want this to leak onto you. Like, he gives a shit about anything like that. He lies again and says he didn't know about any of the crimes or what went on. He's changing his story while they're talking because 2 seconds ago, he referred to the intimidation of witnesses as salty moves. So he said salty moves about something just a second ago, but now he's claiming he didn't know anything about any of the crimes that were going on. It was 25 years ago, and they were running cruises out of tin pot ports registered in bongo hovels, and we poured millions in. Did we play rough with the odd fucking union boss or some moaning mini repeat litigant? I don't know. Like, it was so long ago, and I don't read my emails. How was I supposed to know or remember everything that was going on? This sounds like so many conversations that I hear about from my clients. You remember every detail of everything that happens. I don't remember things like you remember them. I mean, not everyone remembers everything that is said at all times. I mean, just because you like to keep score and you're some nitpicking nag doesn't mean I have to remember everything that happens. I don't read all my emails. How was I supposed to know? So he's talking in circles, blame shifting, avoiding any responsibility as if it's unreasonable for anyone to seek the truth. So yes, I fought for you and your brothers, he says, but you won't find a piece of information that makes you ashamed of me. Shiv says, yeah, but what about the law, Dad? The government has a lot of leverage. And Logan says, the law? The law is people, and people is politics. I can handle that.
Well, one thing I do want to point out is that, in the last couple of things you said there, you mentioned a phrase that we often hear from folks who are narcissistically abusing large groups of people and are covering up systemic problems. And they'll say things like, oh, it's just a few bad apples. But they never finish that, right? Because that's not, the quote isn't a few bad apples. It's a few bad apples spoil the bunch. So when you use that phrase, you're outing yourself as, someone who is a narcissistic abuser or covering up for those that have done that. And sometimes it's physical abuse or straight up murder that, folks use that phrase to cover up. Shiv is being objectified by Logan, but she's also being objectified by Kendall in a very, very mean way. He plays a prank on her that is like, just terrible.
She stands up to give a speech at this town hall where she's sort of coming out in this new leadership position. And Kendall is crafty and he sets up all these Bluetooth speakers to play the Nirvana song Rape Me during her speech. And it ruins the speech. And it's sort of another moment, kind of like when she went to go to Lisa the lawyer and that didn't go well. It was a failure. Him embarrassing her and basically sort of disempowering her during that speech tanked her stock yet again. And, Logan even looks at her at one point and says, sorry, Pinky. Like, we all know that now you're kind of worthless.
She's just a pawn in the fight between Logan and Kendall. And they're both using her as a piece against each other, and she has no control over that. And so it's a shame because this role that she's getting is even another little, it's just a way to keep her on Logan's side or whatever, is to give her this, presidential role as to throw her a bone. But you're going to be CEO. You're going to be CEO. But first you got to do this, And so as always, we talked about with Logan, he's always moving the goalpost.
You just mentioned moving the goalpost and how that Logan is constantly moving the goalpost. That is a strategy that narcissistic abusers use. And he even admits to it. Logan calls Shiv to tell her to back off from her bossiness, that, when she was feeling empowered in that position and she kind of came in and was kind of a little bit telling people what she thought they should be doing. And one of the execs calls Logan and says, your daughter's here kind of rocking the boat a little bit. And he calls Shiv up and says, hey, zip it. And she says, but if you give in to them, they will start to cut me out of decision-making. There's a line, she says. Logan says, nothing is a line. Everything, everywhere is always moving forever. Get used to it. There is no line. And that's right. He's constantly moving the line.
Not for him. Yeah, not for him. She does try to get some modicum of revenge against Kendall. She writes an extremely scathing letter to the press with all kinds of weaponized information against Kendall. But this blows up in her face, too, because not everybody likes dirty laundry being aired in public.
It's true. Now, don't forget that the kryptonite of narcissism is truth. Avoiding the truth is pretty much the number one goal at all times, because the truth keeps us tethered to something that we all have to agree on as being true. You saw it, I saw it. I'm holding a highlighter right now that is yellow. Can we agree? Right?
Yes.
We don't want that if we're a narcissist. It's, well, I mean, it is yellow, but you can also see that it might be lime.
Chartreuse.
A little bit of lime, chartreuse. Yeah, you know, as a fake news, alternative facts, right? So we want to always keep the narrative malleable, shapeable, shiftable, moldable. Truth does not allow for that. So when Shiv is pissed about what happened during her speech, she decides that she's going to speak some truth. And she writes a letter to the press about her brother that basically is honest about him, his history, his struggles, what his issues are. And you would think that this family who kind of likes to hurt each other would be like, yeah, fuck him. But no, when she presents this letter to Roman and Connor, they're like, I don't feel good about this. Roman's like, nah, I don't like this. Now, don't forget that there's a scene where Ewan, that's Logan's brother, is talking to Greg, and this is a couple seasons ago. He mentions that he doesn't think it's good to air dirty laundry. Now, Ewan can't stand his brother. He's actively, engaged in conflict in his own games with Logan, right? He thinks he's superior to all of them and that he has actually got the moral high ground, but he too does not like to air dirty laundry. So while Shiv finally spoke the truth about something, but did it, of course, in a strategic way, they're not signing off on it at all. And it's just interesting to watch how they shut down the second something honest happens.
So we got a big part of the season going on here where there is a deal trying to be made with Sandy and Stewie, and Shiv's trying to help out with that. But right in the middle of all this, the details don't really matter about what this deal is about. It's really what happens here. And Logan has a medical episode.
You got a situation with the board happening, and there's a meeting going on, and they're all going to vote. But then you got Sandy and Stewie and a deal going on there. And right at the same time, Logan gets piss mad, which means that he has some sort of a UTI infection. And it is true, I have heard that, older people, when that happens to them, it can cause them to have cognition issues. And you can see that he is going downhill quickly. He's not making any sense. He's really super grumpy, but he's nicer to Tom and Frank than he is to his own kids when he's in that state. Like, he feels safer with Tom. And when his kids come around, he doesn't, so it's interesting when he's in that vulnerable state that he does not want his children anywhere near him, it seems. There's this other metaphor, this other wildlife metaphor that happens that sort of leads into the scene where Shiv is trying to enjoy this moment of their accomplishment. She saves the day. There's some champagne glasses coming out, and Shiv, Logan's being grumpy. And Shiv says, can't we just enjoy this moment for a second? I mean, we did, let's clink the glasses. And he says, there's blood in the water. The sharks are coming. And he's right. He's right. But this wildlife metaphor of we have to continue to be in survival mode and fight at all times. Do not take your eye off the prize, not for 1 second. Don't rest. You have to stay vigilant. He's been nothing but nasty to her all day while he was disoriented. He's, like I said, he was nicer to the executives than to her. He shoos her away like she's a child, in like turning his body in this nonverbal way. And but she's kind of like not taking the hint. She's blowing him off. So she continues to try to interact with him. She wants to share this celebratory glass with her father, and he swats it away and says, Shiv, I am trying to talk to Jerry about something important. It's like she's this annoying little kid who's in the way. Then he screams at her in front of everyone, stop buzzing in my ear. Another wildlife metaphor, buzzing in my ear. This is how little you are to me. You are insignificant. You are a gnat that I need to swat away. You're that tiny in my world, and you are that annoying to me. just saying something like that doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal, but it is abusive. And when someone hears things like that over and over again through the course of their life, they start to believe it. Now, Shiv, she still thinks pretty highly of herself, but there's still, you can see within each of those children this brokenness as a result of the abuse they've endured that prevents them from having good, healthy, genuine relationships in the present. And it's moments like these that just add up.
Tom is turned on by Shiv's power play here, right? And we learn that he tracks her cycles and he wants to have a baby and has wanted to have a baby ever since his connection to the company, his other connection, which is Logan, is maybe not doing so good.
When we first meet everyone, Logan has an episode and is in the hospital, and it seems like that he may not live. And Tom gets down on one knee to propose. Now, fast forward, here we are again. Logan is sort of struggling, and you can see that he's declining in his abilities. But then you see Shiv, who shows that she can hang, she can get things done. And Tom feels like, I need to lock this down. I need to shore up my position here. So during the negotiations, he comes on to her and says that he loves how she smells during her time of the month and that it makes him horny like a dog. She finds this disturbing that he is tracking her cycles. I guess if you know how to do that, you could just do it, without confirming anything. He would just know and then time it himself. And it sounds like that's what's going on. And now with Logan having another bout with these faulty cognitions, Tom thinks this is the perfect time to impregnate her.
Hey, these are business decisions. You know what I mean? This is a business relationship. This is the right time. He doesn't just come right out and say that, though. He tries to use his, husbandly ways to get what he wants here. Well, in another scene in an SUV, in a black SUV, Logan abuses Shiv. She just wants to kind of get a little recognition for this amazing thing that she pulled off, right?
She's, clearly a little bit salty, and Logan gets in the car and says to her, "You're not going to be a sourpuss, are you?
Jesus Christ.
You're not going to hold me accountable for my behavior, are you? You're not going to expect that I apologize, are you?" That's his way of saying, I know that I treated you badly and that it probably, hurt your feelings, but I'm not apologizing and you're going to just need to get over it. But that's his apology. Also, because at least he's acknowledging that he did what he did. Most of the time, he just will act like none of it ever happened. There's this scene with Roman where Logan is flirting with Carrie. Roman informs Shiv that Logan is having sex with Carrie. The private jet lands and they start getting into their armada of SUVs, and Shiv asks Logan if she could ride with him. That's when he says, uh-oh. Oh no, I'm in trouble because she's going to be mad at me for being mean to her. It's very misogynistic type attitudes. She's crazy. Uh-oh, must be her time of the month. She's pissed. Oh no, she's mad at me. Or she doesn't like me. Remember, I wonder if you even like me. It's not about liking you. It's about that you're an asshole, an abusive asshole that runs over her feelings all the fucking time and can't nurture her emotionally for the entirety of her life. It's not that she doesn't like you, but they'll reduce it to something like that. And that's so manipulative. And then she kind of fawns, which is your typical response is oh, everything's fine. And she's like, what? No. No, I don't know what you're talking about. But the last time we spoke, she did say this. She says, the last time we spoke, you humiliated me in front of everyone at the shareholder meeting. So I thought I would just check in. Logan says, it was a long day and I was unwell. He doesn't do apologies. Shiv goes on to make a competitive move against Roman, saying he screwed up the call there was a call with the president that Roman did. He didn't do so well. So she's still really competing with Roman. He didn't contribute to the shareholder meeting situation at all. And she knows Roman has had Logan's ear saying crap about her. So she wants to do the same thing. She wants her father to know she is the one who saved the company at the shareholder meeting. She just wants a little recognition. What does he say? Carrie, get Shiv a medal. Minimizing her, yet again, squashing her down so she feels small, unimportant. Instead of saying you did awesome, we would have been nowhere without you. I'm so glad you were there to help us. Never get anything like that. It's sad.
And it's narcissistic abuse as well to oust someone from the clique. You know what I mean? When you got your little group. And so he's saying his new girlfriend or whatever that works for him, she's in the clique, but my daughter isn't. You know, it's also that added thing right there, which is pretty shitty. So now another shitty relationship is the relationship between Shiv and her mother. And this is fascinating. Shiv's mother is cold-hearted. Her name's Caroline, and she's getting married to her neighbor, right? So she wants Shiv to play nice, is what she says, but then just tells Shiv she's a shitty daughter. And a lot happens right here.
You learn a lot about how these kids turned out the way that they did and why Shiv is the way that she is just from this conversation with her mother. She basically says whatever she wants all the time, and she makes these jabs and she just says mean things. But if you call her on it, then she does the same thing Logan does, which is like, could you just act right and not hold me accountable for being...
Uh-oh, I'm in trouble.
Exactly. And making it seem like, oh, this, you're being a baby, essentially. She says, let's not snipe. Then Caroline says, or did you come to get some attention? So not only can Shiv not say that, hey, that hurts, please don't do that. But in her saying, hey, that hurts, is her just looking for attention. You're just attention seeking. This isn't even a real thing. Well, why wouldn't you want attention from your mom? Isn't that kind of a natural thing? Like that's innate within us? And negative attention is probably the only attention that Shiv ever got. And Shiv laughs like, yeah, right. I know I don't get any attention from you. And that ship has sailed. Well, this pisses the mom off, like her little jabs aren't working and Shiv is not acting right. And so now Caroline's going to ratchet it up a little bit like we do. She says, well, I may have been a spotty mother, but you have been a shitty daughter. Caroline mentions that she moved to New York to be closer to her kids, but she never saw them. And Shiv says, you weren't spotty, you were absent. You let dad take us. And it was probably for the best. Caroline says that she gave him custody so that the kids could keep their shares of the company and she could protect their interests. Then she says to Shiv, you chose your father over me. Shiv was like 10, 11, 12 years old or something when all this was going on. And in case any of you don't know this, children are not adults. And children can't handle adult things and shouldn't have to handle adult things. It's actually not good for them. You're supposed to protect children from adult things. Their brains aren't ready for it yet. So to say you chose your father over me to a child who's going through a divorce or a custody situation is just, it just shows that parent is not a healthy parent. I've never won any battles in my whole life. You were 13 and you knew how to twist the knife. You knew then and you know now. So this is the first time we hear Shiv being referred to as her nickname of Shiv, meaning a knife. And that's something that comes back a little bit later of how she can get in and kind of jab at you and stab you. She can walk right up to you, look you right in the face, and she's the ultimate assassin in that sense. So Shiv meaning she will knife you. But then Shiv, at a certain point, Caroline is acting like she's going to cry. And Shiv calls her out. Oh yeah, where's the onion? Like these are fake tears. Caroline says to her, you are my onion. Wow. So all of her tears are because of her daughter and how her daughter is so shitty. Shiv says, well, you're my fucking onion. And then they look at each other with this sort of like love-hate, pleased to see how they hurt each other. They bond in this moment in their mutual hatred of each other. When Caroline needs to bring out tears, she thinks about her daughter. And when her daughter cries, she thinks about her mother. And then Caroline speaks some truth. She says, truth is, I probably should never have had children. You've made the right decision. Some people just aren't made to be mothers. What a bitch. What a bitch saying that to your daughter. And in context, earlier, Shiv told Tom that she dreads talking to her mother because she is always digging and asking how the marriage is and when we're going to have kids. When are you going to have kids? When are you going to give me grandkids? When are you going to give me grandkids? Also, it's probably a good idea that you don't have kids because you would be a horrible mother. This is her mom, again, the roller coaster of needing affirmation, getting love, getting not love, love, not love. Then Caroline says, back to the wildlife metaphors. I should have had dogs. Now, remember the dog pound game? Yeah. So I feel like that the children are being compared to dogs quite frequently, as a matter of fact. And in a sense, it is like more objectification, that in these rich families that children, wives, other things are about status and trophies. And children are like, purebred dogs that are
They're like show dogs. Yes.
Like show dogs that they're fancy and they're supposed to act right and do the things that make the family look good. Shiv's face shows hurt, and she says, well, you could have had dogs. But then Caroline says, because it just gets better and better, you think that one person says something that's like the worst, and then nope, here comes the next one. Caroline says, not with your father. He never saw anything he loved that he didn't want to kick it just to see if it would come back. So she wouldn't have dogs with Logan because Logan would have been cruel to the dogs, but she would have children with him?
Yikes. She has the conversation about children with Caroline. And we had earlier in the season, Tom trying to get with Shiv to, for the purpose of procreation. And they're going to try that, and so Shiv and Tom do some role playing, to get in the mood. But it gets a little weird, like not in a sexy way, you know what I mean? And then she accuses him of being manipulative. And they discuss having kids in like the most clinical and weird way ever.
Shiv, after just being told by her mother that she would make a terrible mother, her interest in having children is suddenly sparked. And so she is a little wasted and goes to Tom and is like, let's get, and she wants to do this like BDSM thing of him like saying mean things to her. So she just comes from her mother saying mean things to her. Ew. And then she's asking her partner to say mean things to her.
Gross.
Tom's not into this. Tom really isn't into this, but don't forget, he really wants to impregnate her. So he's willing to go through a lot to get where he wants to go. So he goes through with it, but she says, talk mean to me. And he's like, oh, well, you go first, because he's trying to figure out where we're going with this. And what she says is really mean and not fantasy, more like reality. Like she says, you love me more than I love you. You know that I'm better than you, and that's why you're with me. And he's just like, but again, they go through it anyhow. And then they talk about freezing eggs. And, there are a lot of women that do these sorts of things, especially professional women that want to have babies later on, is they'll take their eggs and freeze them for later. And so they start talking about doing that, and then freezing embryos takes all of the love out of it. It takes all of the emotion out of it. It's the most clinical cold. She said that she referred to herself as the incubation chamber or something like this.
Weird.
So, mom is this cold woman who can't give you any kind of nurturing touch at all. Says to Shiv, maybe you shouldn't have kids. I shouldn't have. Maybe you shouldn't have. Shiv immediately wanting to have a child for the wrong reasons, and then immediately objectifying that child by making it seem this like clinical, we just stick it in a vial and put it over here. And that's motherhood. Generational patterns much? I just want to point out that Caroline represents the number one most dangerous abusive personality, I would say, that exists. And here's why. The narcissistic mother is the origin story of many, many abusers. Many abusers. Furthermore, women who are abusive often go by more undetected than men who are abusive, because we assume that women, I don't know why, but people assume that women naturally have a nurturing spirit and that they're more loving and kind than men are. And I don't know where that would come from. But, we assume about women that they are able to, that they have a nicer personality and that they're just kinder and that you can trust them more. If you're looking at a room full of people, a matriarchal figure with salt and pepper hair who, smiles at everyone is not the person you're thinking is the threat in the room. So that's what makes them even more dangerous, is that they can covertly sort of blend in and act like they're this matriarchal figure that wouldn't hurt a fly. So the narcissistic mother is probably the most damaging abusive figure that you will come across. Not that they necessarily cause damage with the impact of what's happening right now. It's the generational problems that it perpetuates, that we don't have anyone in the house who is going to stand for what is right for the children. And instead, we're just going to continue being narcissistic and cold and selfish and all the things that Caroline is. But when I go back through the histories of my clients and the people that have abused them, those abusers often have a story that starts with a mom. Caroline is a perfect example of that narcissistic mom. And this scene with Shiv is a perfect example of what a conversation would sound like with a mom like that. And Shiv tries the same things that I would see in my clients in her ways of trying to navigate her mother. It's very realistic to me. The unrealistic part is that it's being held in Chianti Shire and that they're billionaires and that they're rich. But the part that is very super realistic is how she talked to her daughter in that moment, made it about herself, made it seem like she was the wounded victim of the situation, blaming things on her child as when they were a child. It was your fault. The 10-year-old, it was her fault. So that's what these moms are like. And I just wanted to point that out, since this is the reason why we're here, is to not just examine Succession, but talk about abusive personalities and narcissistic personalities. And I got to say, Caroline she is at the top of the list.
It's always fun to talk to you about Succession and everything we got going on with it. What's the next episode we're going to be covering?
Our next episode will be Roman Roy, Season 3. We'll see you then. Thanks for watching or listening. Goodbye.
This has been HBO's Succession, an analysis of a toxic family system.
Fuck the matriarchy.